This is video 1.2, and the goal of this video is to understand how to evaluate an expression. If you look at these examples and you think you know how to do this, feel free to try them on your own, but make sure you watch the video to check if your answers are right. If you get the answers wrong, then you need to watch this video to understand some ideas I have to help you solve these problems correctly. So first, before we understand how to evaluate an expression, we need to understand what an expression is and what does evaluate mean. An expression in math is a math phrase with operations, numbers, and or variables. Of course, the variables are the letters, A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. So we're going to have this problem, this operations and numbers and variables that we have to evaluate. So what does evaluate mean? Evaluate means to find the value. That's why we have that word value inside the word evaluate, because we're trying to find the value of a certain expression at a certain point with the certain numbers for the letters inside the expression. So when we're asked to evaluate, for example 1, 2ab minus parentheses b plus 2a for a equals 3 and b equals negative 2, that's really asking us to take a and put in 3. Find out what the value is when a is 3 and put in negative 2 for b. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to show our work by writing down what we're going to plug in. So we're going to replace a with 3. So we still have the 2. And in parentheses, I recommend putting your numbers in parentheses when you're plugging them in to evaluate. So we'll have 2 parentheses 3 parentheses b. So we'll put negative 2 in, minus, and then of course the parentheses in the problem, b, so negative 2, plus 2 times a. So again, when I'm multiplying, I'm going to use parentheses, 2 parentheses 3, and then I'll close all those parentheses. So I've resubstituted in the values. Now we're going to solve. So I'm going to use order of operations, which tells me I have to do those parentheses first. And inside those parentheses, I have to do 2 times 3 first to get 6. I'm going to keep going with these parentheses, and I'm going to finish by adding negative 2 plus 6 and getting 4. Now I'm going to copy down the rest of my problem because I need to finish solving and evaluating here. So I'm going to copy down that subtraction, and I'm also going to copy down the first part, 2 times 3 times negative 2. Now I know those have parentheses as well, but notice inside those parentheses, the 2 parenthesis 3 parenthesis negative 2, there's just a single number in there. There's no operation inside. That's why we didn't do those first. Those parentheses denote multiplication. So that's my next operation after I finished my big parenthesis. So now I'm going to multiply 2 times 3, 6, and then I'm going to multiply that by negative 2, and I get negative 12. And then I just copy down the negative 4, the minus 4 that was originally my problem. Now I get an answer of negative 16 when I subtract. So the answer is negative 16. Now, I'm done with this problem. But if that overwhelms you, all those order operations, here's your second option. Your second option is to use a calculator. Yes, you can use a calculator, but you got to be really careful, and I recommend using parentheses. So just like I wrote out this problem that you see here, you can plug this exact whole big thing in to your calculator with all those parentheses, and you will get the exact answer. Sometimes if you don't use parentheses, you won't get the right answer, which is why we try to teach you these order of operations so you can be smarter than your calculator. So let's take a look at that second option. We'll talk it through on the next problem on how to use a calculator. So here we are at example number 2. Now we're just replacing x with negative 4. So in those 2 spots, we're going to put negative 4. So if we want to use a calculator, here's how it needs to work. We need to use parentheses around our x values. So we're going to punch into our calculator, and we're going to show our work on our paper, and then we'll use our calculator. 2 parentheses negative 4, close the parentheses, and square it. Minus 3 parentheses negative 4. So again, where I see x, I replace it with parentheses negative 4. And then, of course, plus 4. Now I can just punch this into my calculator, and voila, I'll have the answer of 48. So, if you didn't get the answer of 48, you'll want to ask your teacher now what you plugged in your calculator wrong. Now, if you're doing this on paper, let's talk through how to do that with order of operations. Order of operations say I do exponents first. So first I do negative 4 squared, and I get positive 16. Notice that's the only thing that's changed in my second expression. Now I'm going to do multiplication. So I'm going to do 2 times 16 minus 3 times negative 4. 3 times negative 4 gave me a negative 12. So be really careful there. It's a negative 12 being subtracted. And then I have plus 4. So now I got to use some of my rules with integers. I'm at the point where it's subtraction and addition. Those are the same in order of operations, meaning I do them at the same time. So I have to do it from left to right. So to do the left side, I'm going to rewrite that as adding 12 because you use that rule, keep, change, change. So keep 32, change the subtraction to addition, change the negative to positive 12. Plus 4 still. Now I'm going to do the addition, 32 plus 12, and then I'm going to add 4, and I get 48. Same exact answer, but I showed all my work and I did it without a calculator. So again, if you're not getting the right answer with a calculator, you're making a mistake. If you're trying to do it on paper, you're also making a mistake if you didn't get 48. So definitely ask your teacher, get some help, we'll figure out where your errors are. Example number 3. So example number 3 will get you started, and then I'm going to have you punch into your calculator and pause the video. So we start, remember, by finding all the x's. We're going to put 10 in for x. All the y's will get negative 3. So 3, parentheses, negative 3. And then in parentheses, we'll have x plus x squared minus negative 3. Because y was negative 3. So notice I used parentheses this time. I used it around the negative 3. So if you want to know when to use parentheses around your number you're plugging in, up here I used it as well. Remember up there with negative 4? I'm going to use parentheses mostly when it's a negative, because sometimes we forget if it's negative or subtraction, and that does matter. So we want to be careful. So that's why I'm using parentheses around the negatives. I did not use parentheses around the positive 10, because again, it's a positive. I don't need parentheses if it's a positive number. Now, I'm going to punch this into my calculator. You take a minute, pause the video, punch in your calculator, see what you get. You should have gotten negative 1,017. Negative 1,017. Now, if we wanted to do this on paper and walk through the steps, I'm going to show you how to do that again so that you understand order operations a little bit better. So again, we'll copy down the first part. We're going to do the big parentheses first. So I'm copying down the 3 times negative 3, and then I'm going to do the large parentheses first, which means I'm going to square the 10. I'm also going to change the minus a negative 3 to a plus 3 because I use that same rule, keep, change, change. So I keep the 10 squared, make it 100, and change, adding a positive 3. Now I'm going to continue on my path and copy down the multiplication that's in front, 3 times negative 3, and I'm going to finish the parentheses, and I get 113 inside the parentheses after adding. Now it's just multiplication. So 3 times negative 3, negative 9, and then I'll times it by 113, and I'll get negative 1,017. So hopefully you got the same answer as I did. If you didn't, again, ask your teacher because you're making a mistake. Now your job is to complete the problems that you see on the next slide. You're evaluating all of these expressions for x is negative 2 and y is 3. So some of them have just x, some of them have x and y. So make sure you plug in the right number for x or y for each of the expressions. The next problem as well, same idea. Now x is 5 and y is negative 8. So show your work. Show what you're plugging into your calculator or show the work that you're solving if you're doing it all by hand. At the end of class, you'll have a concept check on this, so make sure you're asking lots of questions and getting help on these before we take the test so that you can pass it the first time. Good luck and ask lots of questions.